Thank you for tuning in. As we continue along here, welcome to Malava Malka Parshas Bo 5680 5786. Um, let's open up as always. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable for you, Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Want to begin with a special bracha for the children and for Sfias Hashem, that you should be able to complete your mission and that you should be able to see Go'ula. I had a few moments to spend at headquarters here today, and Sfias Hashem is on the move. I had a few moments to sit with the children, and they are moving. And we should follow their example and make sure that we are alive and well as well. And may God give us all the energy to be able to continue along in many great mitzvahs. Please God. So, Malava Malka Baklau in general is it's called accompanying the queen. Okay, it's first of all, thank you to my wife for affording me the opportunity to be with you guys right now. If we looked in this week's Torah portion of Parshas Beishalach previously, the women were things when the women are enabling the men to study Torah. This mitzvah is theirs, and also as they're bringing the children and learning them in the Torah, teaching them, learning them in the Torah, then it becomes their mitzvah, you know. And thank you for Rabbi Perry, also Jonas and Perry. He's the one that inspired me to the concept of learning Malava Malka. I'm not sure where we pulled this out of, but he said this is when it goes down for the learning. It's like all the learning for this week goes with us all week. So just Malava Malka, briefly accompanying the queen. Stay with me as long as you can. I'm going to keep some short snippets for those of you who can stay with that amount of time. Then we're going to go into the sikha. It's going to take a little bit more time. And then lastly, we have a special treat this week, and we'll get to that for those of you who are able to get to that. You have enough content to last you through the week, little by little, whatever that you can do. The Rebbe wants us to stay and live with the time. So this is what we have for now. I'm kind of controlling the content. I don't want you going backwards right now. I want you to just stay where we're at for right now. If you get that far, send me a message. We'll get you situated. 602-338-0129. Feel free to give me a call. So for those of you who I got to get to real quick, we did the kids first. We're going to keep it clean. We'll keep the family program. And we did the bracha for the kids. Melava Malka, this accompanying the queen, is it's a Jewish custom of eating a fourth meal on Saturday night immediately following Shabbat to honor the departing Shabbat queen. It is considered a significant mitzvah or a commandment or a way to bring down godly light that extends the holiness of Shabbat. It traditionally features music, stories, and bread, ideally eaten within 4 hours of nightfall. It'll go into more concepts. The Hayam Yam wants to keep talking about this frenetic energy. Okay, I don't know where we're at today. We'll come to that later, and I don't have the Hayam Yam on the program right now, but it's talking about this frenetic energy of our emotions. Okay, and transforming it into intellect. And what it's talking about, we're getting into this concept of godly light coming from above, and then down here we create a light and send it back forth. And it's talking about this frenetic energy. And it's like as we do this and we keep building it, what it's doing is it's bringing the Shekinah down to the earth, which is mamish. Actually, the times of the Messiah, and this as it speeds up, there's like it's creating this time and this godly the way I envisioned it today, it's like two sticks of friction when you rub them together. It finally gets to a point like God's seeking us and we're seeking God. God's seeking us and we're seeking God. This then there get a little smoke, and then the spark is created. And where we're at right now, we're at the most highest amount of friction that we have ever gotten. Let us embrace, let us walk forward towards, let us remember as we began multiple weeks ago that it's saying just a few minutes of teshuvah is how close we are to this time. It only is going to take 1 hour of teshuvah for us to launch into this messianic era. And we are beholding it right now in front of our eyes. I see the portions of light for some reason, which I like going into that. I think it's very illuminating, but we're going to have a little daily wisdom. How about that? Parshas Yisro. And now for us, it's Saturday night here in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for subscribing. I apologize if the time zones, hopefully there's a way that you can still stay subscribed and not receive a notification in the middle of the night with our time zone. Or if you can turn off your notifications somehow, or and still stay subscribed, or if you can just mute your YouTube, possibly if you're not a power user, so that you can continue to stay subscribed. Baruch Hashem, the daily wisdom, it says for Sunday, the first reading, we're now in the book of Exodus in the 18th chapter, verses 1 through 12. It says, after hearing about the Exodus, Egypt, the splitting of the sea, and the war with Amalek, Jethro went to meet Moses and the Jewish people who were camped at Rephidim, a short distance from Mount Sinai. Although he had already renounced idolatry, he now felt it was time to take the next step and become a Jew, receiving the Torah each day. It's saying Jethro. This is this Yisro. Jethro is a name that you're familiar with. Jethro heard about all that God had done for Moses and for his people. The splitting of the sea, the war with Amalek, and Jethro's conversion to Judaism were all prerequisites to the giving of the Torah. We must relive these events in our daily lives, for God gives us the Torah anew each day, granting us new and higher insights into life every day from the infinite well of Torah. But before this can happen, we must first subdue our inner Amalek, i.e., silence our doubts about divine providence. Then we must convert our inner Jethro, i.e., win over the part of us that still prefers to serve the idols of excessive material desires. But in order to take these steps, we must first, quote unquote, split the sea and enter it, i.e., temporarily immerse ourselves totally in holiness through our morning prayers and regular Torah study. The divine consciousness we experience this way enables us to bring a higher awareness into all aspects of our daily lives, eating, earning a living, interacting with others, and so on. Then when we make time during our day to study the Torah, we will be able to uncover new insights that make it eternally relevant, thus hearing God's voice from Sinai on a day-to-day basis. We're very grateful for the daily wisdom right there. Oh boy, 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 oh boy. Let us learn the Sika. Sicha. Parshas Yisro, number 3. We're learning here from Lakota, volume 11, page 74, adapted from a Sika, delivered on Parshas Shabbos, Parshas Yisro 5725. This was the year 1965. The introduction begins here. Those of you who have the shortened, attention span, we're just still 10 minutes in. So if you do 10 more minutes, that'll be great. Hopefully we get through the introduction before then. Then we'll spend an hour. Then we're going all the way up the ladder with God's help. Introduction here says that often the question is raised, why is the Torah reading that describes the giving of the Torah called Yisro? True, Yisro was Moses' father-in-law. He provided Moshe with valuable advice and was a sincere convert. However, when naming this Torah reading, it would seem natural to call it Moshe or Sinai or something else that or somehow reflects the unique importance of this watershed moment in the world's spiritual history. Why was Yisro distinguished in this manner? An answer to that question can be found in the Zohar statement in Zohar volume 2, page 67b, that had Yisro not acknowledged God, stating in the book of Exodus 18, chapter 11th verse, now I know that God is greater than all deities, the Torah would not have been given. Why was his acknowledgement of such fundamental importance? Rashi, the commentator, states that Yisro had served every false deity in the world, according to Rashi and Makota, to that verse. He was not a thoughtless pagan, but rather possessed and developed mystic knowledge. Okay, he understood that God bestows divine vitality upon this physical world through an intricate system of intermediaries, as our sages confirm. And Bereshit Rabbah 10:6. There is not a blade of grass in this world that does not have a constellation above that strikes it and tells it, quote unquote, grow. Just as other worshippers of false deities, Yisro sought to connect to these intermediaries and derive nurture from them. The implication of Rashi's statement that Yisro had served every false deity is that he was aware of all the various intermediaries operating throughout the spiritual cosmos, but by acknowledging God, he was rejecting their service and accepting his. Based on that understanding, the Zohar associates Yisro acknowledgement of God with the verse from Koheles, the book of Ecclesiastes, 5th chapter, 7th verse. Also, we see in the Zohar, volume 3, page 47b, I saw that there is an advantage to wisdom over foolishness, explaining that Yisaron, translated as advantage, can also mean higher dimension. A higher dimension of wisdom, of holiness, is drawn and comes about specifically because of foolishness. Remember when we were talking about this there's a shtus, this shtus that holds us back, but there's a stush of kadusha, a foolishness of holiness in comparison with holy wisdom. In this way, Yisro's acknowledgement caused God to be revealed in his glory in the higher realms and in the lower realms. Afterwards, he gave the Torah in its fullness. To explain this concept in greater depth, the giving of the Torah nullified the divine between the higher realms and the lower realms. Shmos Rabbah 12:3, Medrash Tankuma, Parshas Vayera, section 15, and labeling the spiritual and the godly to be fused with the material. The refinement of the wisdom of unholiness, the very nadar, in a spiritual sense, and its ascent and inclusion in a sublime wisdom mirrors this fusion. Accordingly, it serves as a preparation for the giving of the Torah. Building on this understanding, the Rebbe explains Rashi's statement in Exodus 18:1 based on Zavachim 1:16a and the Makilta to that verse, that it was the report of the splitting of the Sea of Reeds and the war with Amalek that motivated Yisro to come to Sinai. The splitting of the Sea of Reeds made Yisro aware that the joining of the higher spiritual realms and the lower material realms was possible, and indeed, the initial stages had already been achieved. However, the war with Amalek demonstrated that this union had yet to be consummated and that the forces of evil still opposed it. Therefore, Yisro came and acknowledged God, i.e., he took action to amend and complete the union by refining and purifying the forces of unholiness, a stage that had not been completed until then. As the Rebbe continues, it becomes clear that this sequence is not merely a historical chronicle. We praise God as the giver of the Torah using the present tense. It says we do the third of the blessings recited before Torah study and the blessings recited before and after the communal Torah reading. It says here that at Sinai, God proclaimed in Exodus 20th chapter, verse 2, I am God. It's called Havaya, your Lord, Elokecha. Elokecha has also has a connotation, your strength and your vitality, as we learn in Torah and Shulchan Aruch Chaim section 5, which we will be continuing along with in just a moment here. We had a busy week with Yud Shavat, and also for the women's program, we will be coming on the 22nd day of Shavat, which is next week. We will have the broadcast, a special share. Thank you, Sikos in English, for all you do. We'll be talking about the women's program coming forth then, so please stay tuned. In our everyday lives, the splitting of the sea is paralleled by divine service in the realm of holiness. The war with Amalek parallels the confrontation. Our material environment presents to holiness, while Yisro's acknowledgement of God parallels transformation that results from overcoming the challenges we face. Proceeding through the stages of this sequence enables us to experience a personal identification with the Torah, endowing us with the awareness that godliness is our strength and our vitality, even as we're involved with our everyday realities. We are going to begin and look inside of Yisro's achievement, okay? Once again, coming from the book of Exodus, 18th chapter, 10th verse. Uh, get yourselves comfortable. Prepare to have a heartfelt conversation here. L'chaim, l'chaim, for blessing to life. Dedicating the learning, as always, in honor of Theodore Jason, Ben Homer Doler, my dear brother. Thank you for the excellence that we've been able to continue in your name. And also to my brother-in-law, Richard Allen, Ben Richard Allen. L'chaim, l'chaim. The first to bless. Number one, commenting on the verse in this week's Torah reading, Exodus 18, chapter 10th verse. Oh, you guys have been doing this for so many years. Continued respect, love, bravo, just everything for those of you who have been doing this for so long. No idea how you do it, but you inspire me. And if I can just make it one more day and try to be anything like you, it was such a great blessing. Commenting on the verse in this week's Torah reading, Yisro said, "Blessed is God who saved you." Our sages state, Sanhedrin 94a, Makilta, to the above verse. It is shameful for Moses and the 600,000 Jews who left Egypt that no one had said, "Blessed is God," until Yisro came and said, "Blessed is God." Our sages comment requires clarification, for how can it be that no one had said blessed is God beforehand? After the miracle of the splitting of the Sea of Reeds, Moses and the children of Israel recited a song to God in celebration and thanksgiving. If our sages' intent was that no one had specifically used the word Baruch, blessed, clarification is nonetheless necessary. For what is the advantage of this word over the words of praise and thanksgiving that we just sang in the song recited after the splitting of the sea as we walk through? Similarly, explanation is required regarding the Maharasha's statements in his gloss of Sanhedrin. They did not say, "Blessed is God," in praise of the miracle they experienced. Seemingly, Moses and the Jewish people recited the entire song in praise of the miracle. Cannot be said that the intent is that it was shameful that the Jews blessed God only for the splitting of the sea and not for the exodus from Egypt. For were that the case, it would have been necessary to emphasize that point. The above difficulty can be resolved based on the Zohar's statement that the Torah was not given to the Jewish people until Yisro came and offered thanks to God. This comes from Zohar, Volume 2, page 67b and 67a, and also in the Mimers entitled Vayomer Moshe 5709, Section 6, and Lakute Sikos, Volume 4, page 1271. Blessed is God who saved you. Now I know that God is greater than all deities, according to Exodus 18th chapter, verses 10 and 11. This caused God to be revealed revealed in his glory in the higher realms and in the afterwards, he gave the Torah in its fullness. Here also, an explanation is required for how was it that the virtue of Moses, Aaron, and the 600,000 Jews and their spiritual achievements prior to the arrival of Yisro were not sufficient for the Torah to be given to the Jews. Why was it that they were found worthy of it only after Yisro came and gave thanks to God, saying, God is greater than all deities? Material or intellectual prominence. Number two, the importance of Yisro's praise of God can be understood by first resolving the following question. The Torah begins, 18th chapter, first verse here. Yisro, a leader of Midian, Kohen Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard everything that God did. Why does the verse emphasize that Yisro was a quote unquote a leader of Midian? Seemingly, it should have used more concise wording. Yisro, Moses' father-in-law, heard. Moreover, there are two interpretations of this title. Kohen Midian, A, as translated above, leader, and we learn that in the Makilta. See this in the book of Genesis 47th chapter 22nd verse, and in Exodus 2nd chapter 16th verse, i.e. Yisro was a leader of Midian, and B, a priest. We also have that term for Kohen, as we learn in Shmos Rabbah 122 in the Makilta. He served as a priest to false deities. We see Rashi's later statements, Shmos 18:11, that he was familiar with all the false deities in the world. According to the second interpretation, the reason he is called the priest of Midian is difficult to understand. Did the Torah intend to speak unfavorably of Yisro, as we see in Bava Basra 123a, Pesachim 3a states that the Torah does not even speak derogatorily of an impure animal. So this Yisro, Moses' father-in-law, this question becomes particularly pointed since the content of the Torah reading indicates the opposite, that the intent is to praise Yisro. To explain in truth, the verse does not just describe Yisro as Kohen Midian to diminish his importance. Contrary, it seeks to describe his greatness and the esteem with which previously been regarded in Midian. This emphasizes the magnitude of his character. He was willing to forego his position and come to convert because his heart motivated him to go out to the desert, a wasteland, to hear words of Torah, as we learn in the commentary of Rashi to Exodus 18:5. The second interpretation of Cohen Midian, that he served as a priest to a false deity, reflects the greatness of his knowledge and understanding. For initially, the pagans who erred regarding the worship of false deities and became attached to them were primarily motivated by their understanding and knowledge, as Rambam writes in Hilkos Avodas Kovachim 1:1. They said God created stars and spheres with which to control the world. He placed them on high and treated them with honor accordingly. It is fitting to praise and glorify them and to treat them with honor. They perceive this to be the will of God. In truth, God bestows divine vitality upon this physical world through an intricate system of intermediaries, including the stars and the constellations. The Hebrew term for constellations, mazel, also has the meaning spiritual source, i.e., the heavenly conduit through which divine energy flows. Nazil, Lakute Torah Midbar, page 40b. As our sages say in Breshis Rabbah 10:6 Zohar, volume 1, page 251a, there is not a blade of grass in this world that does not have a constellation above that strikes it and tells it grow. Nevertheless, it is forbidden to worship these heavenly entities because they do not have free choice or any will of their own. They are merely like an axe in the hand of the chopper. We learn this in Yeshayahu 10:15, Isaiah, if I'm correct, to carry out the will of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. There's a lengthy explanation in the Mimer entitled Mayim Rabim. We'll get to that very soon. Also, Taurus Menachem Sefer HaMamre Melukat, Volume 1, page 323, and the sources that are cited there. And in about 230 pages, we're going to talk about it again here as we wrap up the book of Shmos when we get to Tyra portion, page 537. Let's see what's in store. It looks like Parshas Vayikil Pekude, which is interesting, and we'll get to those points at that time. So just as there are intermediaries in this physical world, i.e., the stars and constellations through which vitality is conveyed to the world, so too there are spiritual intermediaries, i.e., angels, the sublime world of Berea and Yetzirah. Indeed, there is an extensive spiritual hierarchy as explained regarding this verse in the book of Ecclesiastes, 5th chapter, 7th verse. Koheles, the translation, the main text, reflects the manner in which the verse is understood by the Kabbalists, not its straightforward meaning. As we see in Or HaTorah, most volume 1, page 131, the verse is cited there, where this verse is explained at length. Now, there is a watchman above the watchmen, and there are higher ones over them. The intermediaries on the physical plane are utterly and entirely nullified, and anyone who ascribes any independent power and dominion to them is a worshiper of false deities. Similarly, we are warned to be conscious that even the intermediaries and the loftiest spiritual realms are merely like an axe in the hand of the chopper. Okay, note that our sages, part A, Sha'ar 32 to 32, chapter 2, in the name of Sifri, to Deuteronomy 4th chapter, 7th verse, the statement that our prayers should be directed to him and not to his attributes is interpreted as referring to the attributes of the world of Atzilus and even loftier realms, these abstract places, huh? Um, uh, Atzilus is here, not Atzmos, huh? Indeed, the Atzmos being more abstract. We have so much work to do, but we're learning little by little, and Hashem is pleased with our work, and you should be pleased with your work. Know that you're doing good. Let's continue inside page 306. Indeed, the loftier the level of the intermediary, the more likely one is to err regarding it. On this basis, a statement that Yisro recognized all the false deities in the world can be understood as meaning that he understood and knew all of the intermediaries, including those on the loftiest spiritual planes. However, as the priest of Midian, Cohen Midian, he erred and conceived of these intermediaries as possessing power and authority independent of God. This constituted the worship of false deities. From the above, we can appreciate Yisro's great intellectual capacity. Hence, the intent in describing Yisro as Kohen Midian is to highlight his praise. According to the first interpretation, he was a respected leader in the land of Midian and was accorded all the honor of the world in a physical sense. Similarly, the second interpretation, that he was a priest to false deities and recognized all false deities, points to his supremacy and intellectual understanding. Both are true. Nevertheless, Yisro gave up all this greatness and prominence and came to Sinai to convert when darkness illuminates. Number 3. On the basis of the above explanation that Yisro possessed great wisdom and knowledge, it is possible to comprehend the Zohar's statement that it was specifically through Yisro's acknowledgement of God's greatness that the Torah was given in interpretation of the verse in Ecclesiastes 2nd chapter, 13th verse. I saw that there is advantage to wisdom over foolishness. The Zohar in volume 3, page 47b explains that Yisrom, translated as advantage, can also mean higher dimension. A higher dimension of the wisdom of holiness is drawn down and comes about specifically because of foolishness, i.e., from the refinement of the wisdom of holiness. The term the main text uses is dele umas ze, literally meaning of the one opposite, i.e., the forces opposite the holiness. Uh, there's a mimer entitled Vayomer Moshe, and section 2 it talks about that further, and which is referred to as foolishness and comparison with holy wisdom. When Yisro, a great sage possessing the wisdom of unholiness, came to study the Torah and declared, "Now I know that God is greater than all deities." You see Rashi's interpretation cited above. He brought about a refinement of the wisdom of unholiness and its transformation into the wisdom of holiness. Yisro's recognition of God came as a result of his detailed knowledge of his wisdom of unholiness and its inherent inadequacy. As such, knowledge both served as a prod and gave him tools to appreciate the knowledge of holiness. Such a transformation of foolishness as a matter of course led to increased light in his wisdom of holiness. In this way, it served as a catalyst for the giving of the Torah, bringing God's wisdom to this material plane. Yisro's acknowledgement of God drew an additional and loftier dimension of light into the wisdom of holiness. That additional light made it possible for the Torah to be given on this material plane, because that transition required that light be drawn down from a very lofty source. There is a well-known Hasidic concept: the preparatory actions that serve as a catalyst to bring about a given outcome must resemble the outcome one seeks to bring about. Accordingly, further clarification is necessary to elucidate what is meant by the refinement of the wisdom of unholiness and how it served as a catalyst for the giving of the Torah. Says here that the preceding paragraphs, okay, footnote 23 on 307, that Yisro's recognition of God made it possible for the giving of the Torah because it generated an increase in the light of holiness, and the transition from a higher rung to a lower rung needs to be empowered by additional light. Nevertheless, that explanation is insufficient because a catalyst and the outcome it is intended to bring about must share an intrinsic connection. That the intrinsic connection between Yisro's recognition of God and the giving of the Torah is the point Rebbe proceeds to explain. As explained in many sources, Shmos Rabbah 12:3, Midrash Tanchuma, Parshas Vayera, section 15, or if you have the Buber edition, it's section 19. Before the giving of the Torah, God decreed, "The heavens are the heavens of God, and earth he has granted to man." According to the book of Psalms, Tehillim 115, chapter 16th verse, i.e., that there be a divide separating between what is godly and spiritual and our material realm. When he desired to give the Torah, he nullified this initial decree, saying the lower realms will ascend to the higher realms and the higher realms will descend to the lower realms. The implication is that the giving of the Torah connected the higher and lower realms, enabling the lower realms to ascend and be subsumed with the higher realms. The refinement of the wisdom of unholiness, the very nadir in a spiritual sense, and its ascent and inclusion in the sublime wisdom mirrors this motif. Accordingly, it serves as a preparation for the giving of the Torah, setting a pattern in motion. Number 4, as is well known, according to Lakutei Torah Vayikra, page 17, and Sha'ar Ha'emuna, the gate of faith, chapter 17. The splitting of the Sia reeds served as a preparation for the giving of the Torah. Nevertheless, the preparation for the giving of the Torah, achieved by the refinement of the wisdom of unholiness, possessed an advantage over the preparation for the giving of the Torah, achieved by the splitting of the sea. The splitting of the sea also reflected the motif of joining together the higher and lower realms. As explained in many sources, Torah or pages 62a, Lakutei Torah Vayikra, pages 7b, 14cd, 15cd, 16c, and d. At the splitting of the sea, the hidden world. Okay, let's go inside here. The sea. It's saying Come on, stay with me here. Follow in a little bit. It's getting good. The Rebbe's trying to teach us something here. These concepts are very, 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 very powerful. Let's not water them down. Know that whatever peace you can get today, this godly light that's being brought into you is changing your life right now and planting seeds in you in a heavenly way that you've never seen before. Number 28 here, the footnote on 308 here. Now it's breaking it down here. Once the sea opens and these worlds are revealed, let's talk about it. The sea is identified with Alma de Escasia, the hidden worlds, okay? Spiritual realms so lofty that they are entirely beyond man's perception. We cannot even conceive of them intellectually. These realms are referred to as Alomas Ha'en Sof, realms of infinity, because they reveal God's utter transcendence. The sea is used as an analogy for these realms because the sea covers up all the plant life and animal life it contains. All that is perceived are the sea's waters. Similarly, in these realms, all existence is subsumed in God's light. So, as explained in these sources that we were talking about, at the splitting of the sea, this hidden world, this Alma de Escasia, this Alamos Ha'en Sof, uh, uh, became joined with the revealed world of the dry land. Now, dry land is used as an analogy for Alma Dies Gallia. The hidden is the Dies Cassia, the dry land is the Alma Dies Gallia, the revealed worlds. These realms of existence are referred to as revealed because we cannot perceive them through our senses or any other barometer within our material world. It is within our capacity to understand the fundamentals of their existence. By using our existence as a base, it is possible to extrapolate understanding of these higher realms. In that vein, Hasidus, or pages 42c, 43b, and similar places, interprets the verse describing King Shlomo's wisdom. Remember when we talked about this? 2 Kings, 5th chapter, 12th verse. He related 3,000 analogies, as meaning that King Shlomo would relate 3,000 analogies for every Torah concept. He would see and explain to others every Torah idea as it exists on 3,000 planes of existence. Each analogy he gave was a manifestation of the same concept on a lower spiritual level of existence, since these levels of existence followed a pattern of progressive descent, the Seder HaHashtashalis. They resemble links in a chain. An abstract contemplation of a lower realm can give us some understanding of the loftier realms above. Therefore, these spiritual realms can be described as revealed. As the Midrash explains, the giving of the Torah combined revelation from above downward and sent from below. Similarly, since the splitting of the sea served as preparation for the giving of the Torah, this motif was also manifest at that time. The hidden realms were drawn down within the revealed realms, and the revealed realms ascended and were subsumed within the hidden realms. Although the splitting of the sea prepared for the giving of the Torah, it was not a sufficient catalyst, and the Torah was not given until Yisro came and acknowledged God. That acknowledgement constituted the refinement of wisdom of unholiness that led to the giving of the Torah. Why was this further step necessary? True, fusion of the higher realms and the lower realms is revealed in this hidden worlds that occurred at the splitting of the sea of reeds, reverberated through the spiritual cosmos, as we learn the gate of faith, chapter 17, from the highest of spiritual rungs to those on the lowest of all levels. And it's saying this phrase of the highest of the spiritual rungs to the lowest is borrowed. We learn this in Tanya and chapter 2. Thank you, from the Alter Rebbe. It's calling madregas, translated as rungs, and is the term in the Lashon Kodesh, the holy tongue, while dargin, translated as levels in Aramaic, as is well known. Torah Or, page 78c, and Lakute Sikos, volume 10, page 50. Aramaic is considered the hind dimension, the back, as it were, of Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. Therefore, when referring to the highest, literally the head of all rungs, the Alter Rebbe uses a term in Lashon HaKodesh, a language that represents the most sublime rung. When by contrast, he refers to the lowest of all realms, he uses an Aramaic term, i.e., he employs a language that represents the lowest level. This metaphor can be, let's talk about it some more. We're here. Let's just get it done. It's seeing, connotes a lofty spiritual rung, okay? This was back in, it's still in Parshas Yisro here. It's saying, were Moses to look at the Jews with a spirit of holiness and a manner of re'ah, seeing them with the full intensity of his potential, there will be no need for heads of thousands as they began to split it up, as we know, and the other lesser judges. Moses could serve as the medium to deal with all the Jewish people's concerns in an overt manner. He alone could judge the entire people concerning all their affairs, minor matters as well as major matters. To appoint other judges, it was necessary for Moses to undergo a descent from his level in a manner similar to the above description of him being weakened when they talk like a female it was saying about him. Uh, 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 oh man, this is the fire. I mean, we're just going. And so to connote this instead of a form of this Hebrew term, this re'ah, um, Rosh Aleph Yad Hey. Yisro used the Aramaic term sechizai, sechize, a term from the popular vernacular. And like contrasts the two terms, if you will. This indicates that Moses' level of sight underwent a transition and a descent into a worldly language. To explain using the terminology of Hasidus here, the sekazeh is the hind dimension, like the back of Re'ah. When Moses viewed the Jews in this manner, he saw them as they inherently were. On that level, it was necessary to select heads of households to judge them. It's saying, to explain this similarly, one more time. Um, a person's countenance expresses his vitality and inner feelings. Looking at his face tells you who he is. By contrast, his back, though functional, reveals nothing of his inner self. Okay. By saying Aramaic is the hind dimension, the back of Lashon HaKodesh, Hasidus is implying that the concept is being perceived or presented in a manner which reveals its external form but not its inner energy. This is reflected by the fact that the Hebrew word panim means both face and inner dimensions. Are we getting it? All that time for just one little piece here. Hopefully, God is breaking it down for you. Let's look back inside footnote 32. Nevertheless, this fusion only included the lowest level within the realm of holiness, lowest levels. The refinement and the ascent is brought about did not affect what was truly low, the lower levels, in the realm of evil. The splitting of the sea had an effect on evil, for the Egyptians drowned in the sea. However, they were not refined or elevated. It is only that they perished and ceased to be. Since the forces of evil were not refined at the time of splitting of the sea, it was possible for Amalek to come and fight against the Jewish people. On the surface, Amalek's attack had no basis in logic. From a spiritual perspective, the revelation of the light that brought about the splitting of the sea was drawn down in the spiritual realms throughout the spiritual cosmos. It also produced an echo within this world, our lofty material plane, to the extent that nations heard. As we learn in the book of Exodus, 15th chapter, 14th verse, of the splitting of the sea from one end of the world to the other. Mekilta on that Exodus 18 chapter, verse 1. Moreover, they actually saw the miracle with their own physical eyes, for together with the Sea of Reeds, every body of water in the world split. According to Exodus 14th chapter, 21st verse, in the Mekilta, we learn this revelation shattered their composure and motivated them to bittle. We're talking about bittle today. I don't know if they have it in this guide. I want to talk to you about bittle. Thank you, Seacoast in English, for just lighting up the flame. Thank you, Rabbi Yona Atzvon. Thank you, Shmuel. Thank you for the family. Thank you for the work. Thank you for the VOD SIE. The term bittul, it's an adjective, batal, is commonly translated as self-nullification, self-effacement, or self-transcendence. In the Hasidic thought, the term has two definitions, okay? Bittul, hayesh, the person or the entity nullifies himself, more particularly his self-expression, and bittul hametzios, the person or the entity's existence is subsumed entirely in something larger than itself, to the extent that it no longer has any awareness of its own identity. Hasidic thought offers analogies to explain these two levels of bittul. Okay, you ought to know bittul, and I'm glad we're stopping right now so you understand bittul, this concept. Just if you don't have any time this week, if you don't got 3.5 to 5 hours to sit and learn this, put this on repeat right here. Y'all who know how to share it, clip this clip right here. Lahabdil, we used to have a guy when I grew up, we'd listen to him, and Lahabdil, Charles Stanley, he'd say, jot this down. A, to borrow the wording of our sages back inside. Shabbos 63a, to borrow the wording of our sages. Of what value is a candle in broad daylight in the presence of a great and overpowering light? Of what significance is the light of a mere candle? B, a candle as included in a torch. And this, the shine and its light is important. However, it is important not as an entity in its own right, but as part of something larger, more encompassing. Similarly, with regard to Aish, an entity feels itself as small and therefore restrains its self expression. Nevertheless, it feels itself in a person's relationship with God. Bittul Hayesh means that a person is self aware and yet understands that God is so much greater. Therefore, he realizes that he must become Batel and submit himself to him. With regard to Bittul Hametzias, by contrast, the person or the entity has no self awareness. He or it is overwhelmed entirely by the greater whole in which it is subsumed, to the extent that it does not feel itself at all and takes on the identity of that greater whole. Sounds like marriage advice for us. 648 in the SIE, to focus in the Shmot. It might be in the Isses and the glosses in the appendix of the different ones. It's also in Sheets. As the series developed, I'll get there when I get there. But and this is in your appendix of your Shmot SIE Exodus. Because in English, focus on a parallel in the realm of halacha and the Jewish law. When a sukkah, the hut outside that we build, is more than 20 cubits high, the sachak, the live branches that we put on top that had to been disconnected from the tree or whatever, is not valid. And we learn this in Sukkah 2a. Among the options available is to increase the height of its floors so that there's less space between the floor and the Sukkah. Our sages explain in the same place in 4a that if a person brings straw or earth and spreads it there, it can serve that purpose, provided he intends to leave it there permanently and does not remove it. If, however, he intends to remove it, the height of the sukkah is not reduced. The term our sages use when speaking of leaving the straw on the earth permanently is bit low, i.e., the straw or the earth is not considered as an independent entity, but as part of the floor. Similar concepts apply when non kosher food becomes mixed with kosher food. If it is mixed with 60 times its volume, it is betel, bishashim, nullified in 60. The non kosher food is no longer considered as an independent entity, and therefore the entire mixture is permitted to be eaten. When applying these concepts in our divine service, it is crucial to emphasize that the bittul that Chassidus calls for not be identified with nor expressed as sheep-like docility. Remember when we talked about, are you goring or are you just faced like docile and all you like is pleasure, or a lack of feelings of self-worth that a person feels on nothing? That's not bittul. On the contrary, bittul is an energizing and empowering factor, enabling him to rise above his individual self and identify with God's purpose. To quote our sages in Rashi Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, 12th chapter, 8th verse, Sifri and Rashi, and Deuteronomy, 1st chapter, 1:7, in the Devarim, the servant of a king is a king, precisely because he is a servant, i.e., his own identity is subsumed within that of the king. The power he manifests is nothing more than the power of the king that is revealed through him. Oh man, we had to go on the battle, huh? So this is complex, guys. This is complex. Stay with me. Um, it's not super complex, but becoming bittle is a complex thing. So we get rid of all our logic. It's the revelation of light. As the splitting of the sea was drawn down the spiritual realms to the spiritual cosmos, I guess all the waters in the world are split. It's also produced an echo within this world, our lowly material plane, to the extent that nations heard, which we're talking about of the splitting of the sea from one end of the world to the other. Moreover, they actually saw the miracle with their own physical eyes, which is such a bigger thing than if you hear about it. Like, anything in your life, when you heard about it, when you heard about the history of something, it's different when you were there. You ought to know that your soul was actually at Har Sinai there and you saw it. This revelation shattered their composure and motivated them to bittul, as reflected by the verses here in Exodus 15, chapter 14th and 15th verse, 5th chapter 14 and 15. Nations heard and were agitated. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. Indeed, all the nations were afraid to do battle with the Jews. Learn in Midrash Shan Kumaki say section 9. How then, after all this, was it possible for Amalek to attack the Jews and cool us down and find us in a part of just this place where we get stuck? And answering this question, this lukewarmness that's been discussed in spiritual matters for years, it can be explained that, as stated above, it was possible for Amalek to come and do battle with the Jewish people, since the fundamental of existence of evil was yet to be refined at the time of the splitting of the sea. True, at that time, the expression and the powers of Klippa, these external shells or whatever that allow evil to exist, were shattered and brought to a state of bittle, like we talked about, non-existence. They didn't even know it was itself, and this influenced the nations of the world. However, the essence of Klippa was neither refined nor nullified, unfortunately, and remained in opposition to godliness. Accordingly, Amalek, representing the essence of Klippa, had the bravado to attack the Jews. Now it says here, to explain using a parallel concept in Tanya, chapters 12 through 13, It is explained that a person can feel an overwhelming love for God during prayer to the point that inclination his natural inclinations are nullified entirely, okay? However, it is only their expression that is nullified. Their essence was not transformed and still remains. You see what I'm saying? Like while you're praying, you ain't thinking. Sometimes you could still have the thought. We didn't go through the whole Tanya right now. We're talking about chapters 12 and 13. It's saying you, when you in there, you just love God. Everything subsumed, all your problems disappear. But when you come out of prayer, then it wasn't really transformed. It didn't become bittle. It's still just right there. It had its expression. It wasn't nullified. The essence wasn't transformed. It still remains. So right after we fall back into this situation, accordingly, after prayer, the person may be aroused to these physical desires as if he never prayed. Ugh. Turn up, y'all. During prayer, his natural inclinations resemble a person who is sleeping, who can wake up and exercise his power. Similarly, in the case at hand, after the splitting of the sea, the power of the klipa was brought to a state of bittul. However, it wasn't transformed. Therefore, afterwards, Amalek could still attack the Jewish people. Yisro realized the dynamic taking place and sought to bring it to consummation by transforming the wisdom of Kalipa. Thank you, Yisro. Thank you. On this basis, it can be understand why, despite the catalyst of the splitting of the Sea of Reeds and the positive influence stemming from the virtues and holiness of Moses and the Jewish people, the Torah was not given until Jethro came and acknowledged that God is greater than all the deities. It was specifically his acknowledgement that brought about the refinement and the purification of the foolishness of the forces of evil, and an increase in the wisdom of holiness. Joining of the very lowest level with the highest level served as for the giving of the Torah. And we just learned in Basi Lagani 5710, which explains that the higher quality of light that is generated by the transformation of darkness into light. When it was talking about this, one point sticks with me from Basi Lagani, and let's bring it into this week. It took 7 generations. This is a lot for you. I know, but just get this one little point, okay? The Shekinah took 7 generations for the Shekinah to be pushed out from the world, okay? From all the things that we were doing that we ought not be doing. God, however, that he figures it out. But Abraham Avinu changed the trajectory, and then his son Isaac comes and he's the 6th generation. As this trajectory, it was pushed away for 7 generations, but then Abraham Avinu starts to draw the Shekinah back down. Okay, and the trajectory changes. Then it went to Yitzchak, and the trajectory still had changed. They didn't even talk about the next 5 generations there. And it's saying that when the light was removed and it came back in stronger than it ever was. And right now in your life, whatever that you're going through, when you have that little bit of a slide back, you have that falling, no, when you come back, you're coming back stronger than you ever were. You just don't return back to where you were. As God is developing the world, and you're taking steps one at a time, know that God is jumping and moving and creating and making everything happen for you. Understanding Yisro's motivation. A few more pages here, and then we're gonna really just see if we can go to the next level. I'm not sure if we can, but we're gonna sure as try. Understanding Yisro's motivation. I hope y'all feeling all right. We only an hour in, and I'm grateful for that because I'm thinking we're a little further past them, but let's just stay right here for a few more minutes and get through. And we still got a lot of mountain to climb, huh? Thank y'all who can stay on this long. An hour is nothing. I repeat, we just sit on Netflix, watch 17 seasons of one show. Come on, y'all. Come on. You can't give 2 minutes, can't give 1 hour for most high. Granted, I ain't the best orator, but you can give some time for most high. Turn on someone else. Turn on YY. You can't get down with YY. You can't get down with no one. YY Jacobson. Look him up. YYJACOBSON. He got 18 hours on there. You want to binge on some Netflix? Listen to 18 hours and transform your life for the better. Understanding Yisro's motivation. Number 5. Pat yourself on the back 4 times because I'm so proud of you that you made it this far. I'm not trying to give you the hard stick. We should know that we can draw close, and God's opening up. Used to be a time when I had this to do, had that to do. I need entertained. I did. Get out of here. Trust in God, depend on God, make an effort towards God, spend some time with God before we have no more time to spend with God. This is what hell truly is. You're going to look back and say, man, I had an opportunity in this world, Lord, where you told me to come near to you and listen and listen to your voice while I could be heard, and I turned away to foolishness. This watching people don't even exist acting like someone else. Help us, Father God. Help us, Father God. Help us. It's not our fault. He gave us these challenges, but no, He gave us the strength to overcome. Turn now. Choose this day whom you're going to serve. Based on the above explanation, it is possible to explain this wine of the Torah. The Alter Rebbe once said the commentary on Rashi on the Chumash, very interesting. This Rashi is the wine of the Torah, Mamish, Simchas, and the Sikas in Simchas Torah 5697, Hayam Yam. Entry for 29th of Shavat, Emri Bina, Sha'ar Hakira Shema 53, which states that the term the wine of the Torah refers to the Torah's mystic secrets. What do they call this wine of the Torah in the original? This is like hey says Vehine Alpe Yavar Shoa Torah. What's it call it? It's like Panemius I don't know. I call it Panemius Hatira. They use a lot of acronyms in here. You got to get further into the index, and I can't see the Hebrew anyway. They take the Hebrew words, which I can barely see anyway, and then they take 4 of the letters and put 4 words because you ought to know what it means. Thank you for all y'all that know what it is and keep continuing to teach it to other people. So it's these secrets and mystical thoughts are embedded in Rashi's commentary to the opening verse to this Torah reading. It's saying here in this 18:1, Rashi's telling us that is based on Zavakim 116a, another source in Makilta to the verse, what quotes the opinion of the different sages. And they're saying that this Gemara is really, really going in. These sources here, like this Savakim is in this source of this Talmud, and this Talmud is directly bringing up the sources inside of there. One who maintains that it was the splitting of the sea that motivated Yisro to come once that had happened. Another said it was the war with Amalek. There are also other opinions. Rashi combines the 2 views cited, implying that it was specifically the combination of both these events that motivated Yisro to come. The splitting of the Sea of Reeds and the war with Amalek. There is a well-known question Yisro heard and knew of all the great miracles that accompanied the exodus from Egypt. Why was it that until specifically the splitting of the Sea of Reeds and the war with Amalek, he was yet to be motivated to come? emphasis. It's necessary to say that the emphasis on Rashi's question, what report did he hear that motivated Yisro, and as a result, he came, is on the fact that it was these reports that motivated him to come. With this comment, Rashi is not focusing on Yisro's hearing of the miracles of the Exodus as a whole that had already been said, as this same verse explicitly states that Yisro heard about everything that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people. And it adds that God had taken Israel out of Egypt, concerning which Rashi comments, this was the greatest of them all. Do you understand the fact that God took us out of Egypt is the greatest thing that ever happened? Rashi's question is that what report motivated him to come and join the Jewish people? If the exodus from Egypt was the motivator, he would have come directly after the exodus from Egypt. Since he did not come until later, we must say it was a different report that actually motivated him to come. We are forced to say, even according to the opinion that Yisro came to join the Jewish people before the giving of the Torah, that he did not come immediately after the Exodus. This conclusion is imperative because he came since he heard about the descent of the manna, and this Kol Asher Asa states, and the manna first ended on the 16th of ER, as we learn in Shabbos 87b, Tosefta, so 11.2, Rashi, Shmos 16.1, true. Rashi and Exodus 16.35 and Yehoshua 5.11, Joshua, states that the manna, however, descended on the 15th of ER, this Hebrew date. However, Rabbi Eliyahu Misrachi, in his commentary to Rashi on Shemot 16.1, interprets that to mean after 15 days an ER had passed, making it 16 mamish. The fact that Yisro came afterwards is also borne out by the fact that he heard about the war with Amalek that occurred later when the Jews were in Rephidim. Moreover, he came to the desert where they encamped to the mountain of God, Shmos 18:5, and the Jews did not come to the Sinai desert until, quote unquote, this day, Exodus 19:1, i.e., the first of Sivan. Shabbos 86b, and Rashi to the verse, it's saying, since Yisro did not leave his land to join the Jews immediately after the Exodus, Rashi asks, what report did he hear that motivated Yisro? And answers the splitting of the Sea of Reeds and the war with Amalek. The commentary of Rashi, interesting enough, even though it includes the Panemius HaTorah, this wine of the Torah, this wine of the Torah, these inner secrets, it's also supposed to be understood by a 5-year-old on top of that. So, don't get lost in your own understanding. When you feel tired, that's when your effort is beginning. Don't give up because you feel tired. There's a Jewish analogy. It says, like, if you rent a donkey for like a taxi, he goes a zuz, or you pay the zuz and the cost is 100, he go XYZ, let's say 1.8 miles, 18 miles, 0.18 miles, whatever he go, let's say he go to one distance for 100. All right, now if he go one step past that and not the full thing, it ain't no proration, it's another 100. And what we're trying to say is that right now, the point I'm bringing that up, when you're doing your normal day-to-day basis and you're taking one day at a time and you're just doing what you always do, it's not enough. You got to go that little distance after that, and what it causes 101% to be received. And that's what God wants from us right now. He doesn't want our 99 and a half. He's happy with that if you're at 99 and a half, and he grades us all individually and puts us on a curve, and he knows your challenges and he knows your struggle, but give of your all to the master. Why was it? Get until specifically the splitting of the Sea of Reeds, and do it with a good attitude too. When we serve the Lord, you don't serve the Lord for reward. You serve the Lord because you love him. That's what we're here for. Why was it that until specifically the splitting of the Sea of Reeds and the war with Amalek, he was yet to be motivated to come and join the Jewish people? Furthermore, the wording Rashi uses, the war with Amalek, requires clarification. Why does he emphasize the war with Amalek and not the victory of the Jewish people, seemingly to emphasize the greatness of the miracle? He should have said the deliverance of Israel and or the downfall of Amalek or the like. However, based on the above explanation, we can understand why Rashi singled out these two events and worded his commentary in this manner. It was specifically hearing of these two events that motivated Yisro to come. The splitting of the Sea of Reeds made him aware that the joining of the higher spiritual realms and the lower material realms was possible, and indeed, the initial stages had already been achieved. However, the war with Amalek demonstrated that his union had yet to be consummated, and the forces of Klippa still opposed it. Therefore, Yisro came and acknowledged God, i.e., he took action. Got it? He took action. Do you got it? To amend and complete the union by refining and purifying the forces of unholiness, a stage that had not been completed until then. This also explains the precision of Rashi's wording. It was specifically the report of the war with Amalek, not the Jews' victory in that war, that motivated Yisro to come. Saying here it is possible to explain why it was the war with Amalek, not the victory, that motivated Yisro to come. From a slightly different perspective, the war with Amalek weakened the stature of the Jewish people in the eyes of the other nations of the world and reduced the awe with which the nation guarded them. Before Amalek attacked the Jews, the lords of Edom were terrified. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. The attack of Amalek changed that, as our sages and Midrash Tanchuma and Yalkut Shimoni Rashi comment on the phrase regarding Amalek in the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, 25th chapter, 18th verse, who encountered you, Korcha, noting that Kor also means cold. They use the analogy of a reckless person who jumps into a boiling bath. Even though he himself suffers severe burns, he cools it off for others. Similarly, Amalek cooled off the nation's fear of the Jews after the splitting of the Sea of Reeds. Although Joshua weakened Amalek and his nation by the edge of the sword, according to Exodus 17, chapter 13th verse, he merely weakened them, as our sages comment on that verse, as we see in Rashi, who states that the weaker Amalekites were left alive. Moreover, Joshua's victory did not involve an overt miracle. Instead, it was by the edge of the sword, i.e., involving a battle fought according to the natural order. For this reason, Yisro, Cohen, Midian, and as we spoke about before in the two interpretations, the priests of Midian and the priests of these things and this leader came to restore the Jews' honor by journeying to the desert to join them. Thank you, Yisro. A necessary preparation, number 6. We're almost there, y'all. We're almost there. The above clarifies another point that requires explanation. One of the well-known general principles in Jewish thought is that a sequence should follow the pattern, always proceed higher in holy matters. This comes from Barakos 28a, and the source is mentioned there. Needless to say, the collective experiences the Jewish people underwent between the exodus from Egypt and the giving of the Torah followed this pattern. During that time, they departed from the 49 gates of impurity, Zohar Kadash, in the beginning of Parshas Yisro, Tikkun Zohar, Tikkun 32, and ascended level after level until they were worthy of being given the Torah. Their spiritual progress is reflected in the fact that during the counting of the Omer, the time period between Passover and Shavuot, the giving of the Torah, each day an additional gate of holiness is drawn down, as we learn in Likutei Sikos, Volume 3, page 996, okay? However, though the war with Amalek occurred during that time, it does not appear to follow this pattern. It led to an awesome descent for the Jewish people, to the extent that as a result of this descent, God will be at war with Amalek from generation to generation, as we learn in the book of Exodus, 17th chapter, 16th verse. We'll talk about Amalek soon, if God so wills. A great what is that called? Ratius, an end to evil. Make me want to go get it now and learn it. A resolution can be offered based on the above concepts. The war with Amalek demonstrates the necessity and thus was the cause for the refinement and purification of the forces of unholiness achieved by Yisro. His acknowledgement of God represented an ascent and a revelation that surpassed even the revelation of the splitting of the sea. Thus, the war with Amalek was also ultimately a part of the most sublime ascent, the most immediate preparatory step for the giving of the Torah. What Yisro accomplished. Number 7, the above explanation enables us to clarify our sage's statement. It is shameful for Moses and the 600,000 Jews who left Egypt that no one said, "Blessed is God," until Yisro came and said, "Blessed is God." Baruch, Hebrew for blessed, implies extending and drawing down to lower levels, as reflected in the wording used by our sages in Kelayim 7:1, Torah Or, page 37c. One who extends a vine, hamavrach, Hamavrich. Thus, blessed is God connotes drawing down godliness, the revelation of godly light generated by the song recited by Moses and the 600,000 Jews in their divine service was extremely lofty. However, it did not have the same effect as Yisro's statement, "Blessed is God, God is greater than all deities," because it did not involve the lowest levels in the existence of the forces of unholiness, was not refined through such divine service. This resembles the lack present in the divine service of Sadiqim, of the righteous men who do not directly confront and vanquish evil. That refinement was not achieved until Yisro came and said, "Blessed is God." With this statement, he drew down the revelation of godliness to the ultimate degree, extending it to the very lowest levels and refining them with his acknowledgement. When this was accomplished, the Torah was given, fusing the higher spiritual realms with the lowest material realms, not merely a story from the past. Number 8, the above provides a directive for each of us in our own divine service. The giving of the Torah recurs and must be reflected in divine service every day, as indicated by the use of tense in our daily blessings, where we praise God as the giver of the Torah, as we learn in Likutei Torah, by Ikra, page 23a, and the sources there. Sets the stage for the recurrence of the reliving of the giving of the Torah, our divine service, in keeping with the directive, know him in all your ways. That's from the book of Proverbs, the Mishlei 3:6, and there's a lengthy discussion in Likutei Sikos, volume 10, page 100 FF. As explained in Tanya in chapter 3, knowledge is identified with bonding and attachment. To know him in all your ways means to be connected and attached to God, not only in matters of holiness, but in all your ways, even in your personal matters. It's saying personal matters is a translation for divrei rashis, which literally means permitted matters or matters left to one's own discussions. You got to acknowledge the Most High and the things that are allowed for you, and the things that are not necessarily a shortcoming for you, but we need to acknowledge God in those things. Moreover, the intent is that this connection affects not only those personal matters that are close to holiness, but even those far away. Though comparable to the war with Amalek, the very antithesis of holiness. Nevertheless, the outcome of that war led to the preparation for the giving of Torah. However, before confronting Amalek, as explained above, one's divine service must include a spiritual parallel to the splitting of the sea, i.e., divine service in matters of holiness. This empowers and enables one to wage war against Amalek, refining one's personal matters. This divrei rachis, these permitted matters, or things that seem that they're outside of the box or not, don't need to be concerned about God because they're allowed. You need to consult him on those things. One's daily activities must begin with prayer, to use our sage's words in Brachos 5b. My prayer should be next to my bed, i.e., recited immediately upon arising. Father God, help us. Afterwards, one should proceed from the synagogue to the house of study, i.e., immerse in Torah, according to Shulchan Aruch or Chaim, section 155, 1, based on Moed Katan 29a. Help us, Father God. Only then should one conduct himself according to the way of the world, i.e., pursue his occupation. We also learned that in section 156 and based on Brachos 35b. The Rebbe is describing a three-stage pattern. The first stage is a revelation of that divine light that parallels the splitting of the sea of reeds, a revelation in the realm of holiness that, like the splitting of the sea, did not affect the lowest dimensions of worldly experience. This is unparalleled by a person's daily divine service of prayer and Torah study. Afterwards follows the war with Amalek, and more fundamentally, Yisro's acknowledgement of God, i.e., confronting and overcoming the very core of material attraction. This is paralleled by our divine service of knowing God in all your ways, that is expressed in our conduct according to the way of the world. That phase of divine service leads to a recurrence and reliving of the giving of the Torah, a uniquely transcendent divine revelation that eclipses the divide between the spiritual and the physical, allowing for their fusion. This should be the order of a person's divine service day after day. He should begin immediately upon rising. The Alter Rebbe Siddur begins with the instructions to recite this expression of thanksgiving with his soul's all-encompassing acknowledgement of God. Modeh Ani, I thankfully acknowledge you. Afterwards, he should proceed to structure divine service and prayer and Torah study activities in the sphere of holiness. And we learned how important and how pure the Jew's Modeh Ani is, and how no one can separate the Jew from that. And only afterwards he should eat his morning meal, unless his daily practice is to eat before study, in which instance he should follow that practice, Shulchan Aruch or Chaim, so that he will be healthy and strong to perform the service of his creator. God help us all that are in this classification based on Baba Kama 92a, that emphasizes the health benefits of eating breakfast, literally one's morning bread after prayer. License to eat is granted before study because there is no limit to the time one devotes to study. Communal prayer, by contrast, has limits. Afterwards, one may pursue his personal matters. The reason for this order is that first, one must reveal the light of his soul through prayer and Torah study. Only then is it possible to draw down the light of holiness into material matters as well. For this reason, it is forbidden to eat before prayer. For how would it be possible for a person to elevate the food he eats when he himself is bound to this lowly material realm? Page 316, Yisro 3. This is the proper order of conduct for the overwhelming majority of people, and the Torah's teachings reflect guidance appropriate for the majority. According to Mori Nevuchim, Volume 3 and Chapter 34, needless to say, the directives of the Torah are universally applicable. No one can claim that he is an exception and therefore exempt from a specific obligation. who throughout the day should devote every moment of their free time to Torah study. This is the way one should use his free time. On the contrary, our sages, Sanhedrin 99a, quoted in Tanya, Sefer Shel Benanim, chapter 1, speak very critically of one who does not use his free time for Torah study. The Sikha refers to the Sikha to Tanya by its title, Sefer Shel Benanim, literally the book of the intermediates. As the Alter Rebbe explains in that work, every person has the potential to be a Beinani. Perhaps the Rebbe uses that title here to emphasize that every person can follow the course of divine service mentioned here, to offer a possible explanation for the fact that the Rebbe mentions the two phases of Torah study, one as a continuation of one's service in the realm of holiness before he begins his daily work, and one that takes place in the midst of that daily work. These two stages refer to the splitting of the sea and the Jews' state after the giving of the Torah. The first stage is one of preparation, like prayer. It energizes a person's spiritual power. The second stage reflects the person's activity in everyday life, that being the parallel of Yisro's acknowledgement of God. That activity involves A, an occupation with material matters, knowing God in all your ways, and also B, Torah study, each person according to the amount of time available to him, as the Rebbe proceeds to state, devoting his energies in that field. Indeed, study of this kind represents the primary dimension of a person's Torah study. For one's connection to the Torah involves continually increasing. Zohar, volume 1, page 12b, Torah, or page 39. His Torah study qualitatively or quantitatively add a little bit more time, or being a little bit more focused, and not merely studying according to a fixed pattern each day. Even our prayers, as we're praying each day, there's a danger that we slide into a routine. The thought process is one who overlooks the monthly patterns or is not aware of these things. We each day we need to have heartfelt devotion in each day and be aware of where we're at and not just be going through the motions. But today I'm here to tell you to just go through the motions until you feel it, fake it till you make it. However, in addition to the above, there are many different levels, both in the category of Yisachar, people whose lives are primarily devoted to Torah study, and in the category of Zebulon, those whose lives are devoted to their occupations. There are some for whom their daily giving of the Torah involves learning one chapter in the morning, as we learn in Menachos 99b, in the house of study, and others for whom it involves merely reciting the order of Kedusha, including in the passage Uva Letzion at the end of the morning prayers, as we see in the Samak Sadek's Pasek, Piskei Dinim or Achayim, section 132, which states that the recitation of this passage with its translation was instituted so that every day every member of the Jewish people would study several verses of scripture and know their meaning. For still others, it involves merely the recitation of the Shema, or the passages describing the daily sacrifices, or also the priestly blessing that follows the morning blessings, which also includes prayers. It says thus even such a person's Torah study follows prayers. Carrying out divine service in one of these ways serves as a preparation for a personal giving of the Torah, when it will be revealed that Anoki Havaya Elohecha, I am God, your Lord, according to the book of Exodus, 20th chapter, 2nd verse. Chassidus and Lakute Torah, Deuteronomy, Devarim, page 18a, interprets that phrase to mean Anoki, God's essence that transcends all being, descends and becomes manifest through Havah, God's transcendent name. And then it encloses within every member of the Jewish people, becoming Elohecha, your strength. in your vitality. We learn this in Torah and Shulchan Aruch, or Akayim, section 5. Thank you for learning the Sika. Let's take a very quick break. I want to give you lights. I want to give you music. Take a minute to do whatever that you got to do. I'm going to do whatever that we got to do. We'll take a quick break, and we will continue right along in just a few minutes. Let's take 3 minutes. I'd take 2. We'll be right back. Please stay. Thank you. All right. Let's continue along, shall we? Baruch Hashem. There is a beautiful prayer that's inside of the sitter in the prayer book as we wrapped up the prayers for Shabbat day. And it was saying here that I wanted to share with you in the Tehillet Hashem. This is on page about 130 or so. Actually, on page 133, it's the second part. There's after the Kaddish on, it starts on 131 on Saturday night, except for when a festival occurs in the coming week. This part is added here, the Vayehi, but it ends with, "Blessed is he, our God, who has created us for his glory and has set us apart from those who go astray, and has given us the Torah of truth and implanted within us eternal life. May he open our hearts to his Torah, instill in our heart love and awe of him, and inspire us to do his will and serve him with a perfect heart, so that we shall not labor in vain nor produce that which will cause dismay. And so may it be your will, Lord our God and the God of our fathers, that we observe your statutes in this world and merit to live, to behold, and to inherit the goodness and blessing of the Messianic era and the life of the world to come. Therefore, my soul shall sing to you and not be silent. Lord, my God, I will praise you forever." The source of that coming out of Psalms 20th chapter, 10th verse. "Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, and the Lord shall be his security." Isaiah 65th chapter, 23rd verse. "Trust in the Lord forever and ever, for in God the Lord is the strength of the worlds." It's got a lot of sources here. There was Psalms 30th chapter, 13th verse, Jeremiah 17:7, Isaiah 26:4. Those who know your name put their trust in you, for you, Lord, have not abandoned those who seek you. The book of Psalms, 9th chapter, 11th verse. The Lord desires for the sake of his, Israel's righteousness, to make the Torah great and glorious. That's in Isaiah 42nd chapter, 21st verse. 42nd chapter, 21st verse. Isaiah 42:21. Hopefully you've completed your break now. I completed my break. We do want to proceed to a very special part tonight. Like I said, we do like short portions for those who have a short attention span. We'll start by blessing the kids as usual. Then we'll go into a sikha of the Rebbe. And as we've done that now, we'd like to go ahead and elevate into a mimer to see if what we can reveal, what can be opened up to us with the Rabbam of Chabad, which to speak with Yeshivat, our learning and our activities from Yeshivat still nigh to us, near. For tonight, we'd like to take a look at From Trial to Triumph. And this is a Hasidic discourse by the Lubavitch Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Thought we were going for the Friedeker Rebbe, and but man has his plan, and God has his plans, and may we be able to make sure that we are able to just make sure we're continually in the God. Is anybody ready to go on a little bit, or are we just a little bit too tired? We can do this, okay? Let's give you an introduction and an overview. The history here is saying that when Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson assumed leadership of the Chabad Lubavitch in 1920 as the sixth Rebbe, Russian Jews were in a state of crisis. The revolution and civil war had left the country in the hands of the communists, whose anti-religious philosophy and brutal methods initiated an unprecedented wave of suffering among religious Jews. The Jewish Affairs section, it's called Yevskia of the Communist Party, stated as one of its primary goals the destruction of observant Jewish life. Thousands were executed or imprisoned for operating shuls, the synagogues, the chadarim, the schools, and the mikvayot, the places of ritual bathing, the foundation of the Jewish home. Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak chose to stand up to the Bolsheviks. He risked his life encouraging the followers to defy the anti-religious decrees, and he actively promoted Torah observance through a network of underground schools. In 1927, the Rebbe was arrested by the Soviet secret police and charged with counter-revolutionary activities. He was tortured and condemned to death. Hasidim worldwide were in panic. Later, his sentence was commuted to exile in the distant city of Kostroma. Then came a miracle on the 12th day of Tammuz. Yud Beis Tammuz. The Rebbe's sentence was reversed, and he was allowed to return home. A short time later, he and his family immigrated to the free world from Latvia and Poland. He continued his efforts maintaining communication with his followers in the Soviet Union. Yud Beis Tammuz entered the calendar a joyous festival celebrated each year and marked with Hasidic gatherings and farbringings like we're doing now. And with the onset of World War II, the Rebbe and his family were rescued from the European inferno and made their way to the United States. Lubavitch World Headquarters was reestablished in Brooklyn, New York, from where the Rebbe redoubled his efforts to spread the light of Torah and Hasidic teachings through an abundance of Jewish educational programs. He founded a publishing house called Kihas Publications Society, and he appointed his son-in-law, Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson, our Rebbe, as its director. After the passing of Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak in 1950, his son-in-law assumed leadership of the movement as the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe. In 1951, on Yud Beis Tammuz, the new Rebbe delivered a mimer, a Hasidic discourse, opening with a verse in the 60th chapter of Psalms. The mimer was based on a mimer on the same verse by his father-in-law, with a message intended specifically for Jews who remain behind the Iron Curtain. The mimer discusses how a person can serve God even when faced with extraordinary challenges and how important this is. There's a verse here, and it's translated literally. It means, you have given those who fear you a banner to be raised up for your everlasting truth. However, there's a deeper meaning. The Hebrew word for banner is nes. It bears a relation to the word nisyan, to the word, which means a challenge or a test. The verse is telling us that challenges that come our way are like a banner that is given to us. In this reading, it isn't the banner that is raised up, it is us. The ness, the challenge, gives us the ability to be elevated. Avodot Habararim. All of creation is embedded with sparks of holiness called nitzosot of Kedusha. These holiness, sparks of holiness, okay? When the universe was first created, it was infused with a divine light so powerful that the universe could not bear it. This early phase of divine emanation produced the world of, it's called tohu, chaos. Here, the Sephirot, if you will, okay, this word here, were at the height of their intensity, each one a separate potency, unqualified and unmitigated. This led to Shevarot Hakalim, the breaking of the vessels, a process whereby, to allow for existence, the intense divine light was necessarily shut off, as it were, and only fragments or sparks thereof fell from the upper realm into the lower depths. The breaking of the vessels gave rise to a new orderly world, our present world, that of tikkun, rectification. Tohu is described as abundance of light and a paucity of vessels, while tikkun is described in the reverse, paucity of light and abundance of vessels. Here, the godly light is not as concentrated as it was in the world of Tohu. Rather, the divine Sephirot that comprise the world of Tikkun, our world, are integrated and intertwined. However, remnants of that earlier state remain, the chaos where it's just chilling. The fragments of those shattered vessels are embedded within every physical thing in this world. These shards are the holy sparks, the nitzosot, and this world is a prison. They yearn to be freed, to return to their source, to be reunited and subsumed within God's light. Did you get that? Say it again. We yearn, these holy sparks that exist and even inanimate objects. They yearn to be free, to return to their source, to be reunited and subsumed within God's light. Our objective is to liberate these sparks. When we engage with the world around us, we have the choice of utilizing whatever we encounter for holy purposes. If we do so, we free the sparks hidden in those objects. This is why most mitzvot must be performed with physical objects. When we take a ram's horn, for example, and use it as a shofar, we are liberating the nitzisot buried within. We are refining and cleansing the object. The shofar is the horn blown at Rosh Hashanah. This is avodat habarerim, the work of refinement, and it is the goal of most of the Torah's laws. The metaphor here is one of dialectic, a give and take, a merging of opposites. We engage with the physical and coax it into becoming a channel for holiness. We reveal the purpose for which it was created. The effect is cumulative. With every mitzvah, another spark is released. Another part of the world becomes brighter. In our day to day life, Avodot Habararim begins with prayer, described in the Zohar as a battle. Zohar 3, 243a, Zohar 1, 240b, Takuni Zohar 1329b, and Lakute Torah, Seitzeh 34c and 35c. Prayer involves meditating on the divine, comprehending more each day. One aspect of this meditation is seen in the blessing recited prior to the morning Shema. When we say a prayer, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, in the book of Deuteronomy, 6th chapter, 4th verse. Reciting that verse is the prayer of Shema through verses 4 through 19. Deuteronomy, 6th chapter, verses 4 through 19. Reciting the Shema prayer. It discusses the angelic beings called Ophanim and Chayet HaKodesh. These beings are the spiritual sources of our own animal souls. Contemplating these animals and their passionate worship of God, our animal souls are affected and are won over. Avodot Habararim is the standard mandate of the Torah and its laws. For thousands of years, Jews have been performing mitzvot, elevating spark after spark. When all the sparks are thus refined, the world will find itself in a new era, a time when God's light is seen everywhere, the time of the final redemption. That time is fast approaching. The work is almost complete. There remain, however, a few sparks that demand a different approach. Avodat hanisiyanot. Some nitzosot simply cannot be elevated with this method. They have fallen so low and have become so enmeshed in the material world that they retain little of their original light. Their imprisonment in the physical is so profound that no amount of berorim can successfully liberate them. The metaphor we used above was one of dialogue. Here it's as if we're dealing with someone who doesn't speak the same language. Conversation and negotiation are impossible. After millennia of avodot habararim, most of the ordinary sparks have already been freed. Most of creation has been refined. But the nitzosot that have fallen the lowest seem unreachable. How can these sparks ever be redeemed? The approach here is the opposite of avodat habararim. Instead of engaging with the object and actively trying to elevate it, we must instead completely ignore it. This is manifest in avodat hanisiyanot. Occasionally, we might be faced with an exceptional challenge that stands in the way of serving God. These are nisyanot. They seem to oppose the work we are doing, to represent something evil. In reality, however, nisyanot are opportunities. Imagine, for example, that public observance of mitzvos was declared illegal. The power of the state is directed at punishing those who obey God's laws. This was the case in the Soviet Union. To live openly as an observant Jew was to risk being condemned as a counter revolutionary. This presents an enormous challenge, a nisyon. In the free world, too, modern life has created challenges that are unprecedented. In fact, some who were able to maintain their religious observance in the USSR had a harder time doing so after they immigrated to places of freedom. It is a fearsome darkness that creates this type of challenge. And Nisyan emerges from a place so dark, so devoid of God's light, that the Nitzo salt buried within it have almost become extinguished. And here lies the opportunity. Here is the possibility for liberating these fallen sparks. But the way to do so is not by engaging with them, because that would be fruitless. Instead, we must completely ignore the Nisyon and carrying on serving God as if the obstacle didn't exist. When we are successful, those lowest sparks can finally be freed. This opportunity is one that previous generations did not have. When Moses came to free the Jewish people from Egyptian bondage, the people were not able, they couldn't understand him. They did not listen to anguished spirits and the harsh slavery, according to the book of Exodus in the 6th chapter, 9th verse. They were empowered by the Nisyanot. They were not empowered by the Nisyanot. Rather, they were just bewildered by them. Nowadays, however, by forging ahead despite the Nisyanot, we can elevate the sparks they contain. But why should this be so? Why should these dormant nitzasot be liberated by paying no heed to obstacles in our path? Is because in order to overcome extraordinary darkness, we must channel a source of extraordinary light. Deep within every person lies the etzem, haneshama, the soul's essence. In times of crisis, when observance of the Torah is threatened by Nisayan, we're able to reach deep within ourselves and find this essence, the Yechida, the highest level of the Jewish soul. It is the very core of our being, a state of complete oneness with God. Upon reaching the Yechida, we're empowered to act with Bitul Atzmi, utter and complete submission to God. We're able to put our egos aside and focus on the task, only on the task that is before us. As impossible as it might seem, we're able to act if the threat does not exist, and we can triumph over the Nisyan. When this unusually powerful light is exposed, it illuminates even the darkest of places. It frees even those sparks that have become so diminished that they can barely be called sparks any longer. That is why it's precisely the most recent generations living through the final days of our long exile who have faced the most mighty of obstacles. As we have seen, most of the ordinary sparks have long been elevated. Those remaining are the ones that fell the lowest, which can only be redeemed through avodat hanisyanot. There is something else that is unique about these sparks. Oh. It isn't just that they've fallen to the lowest point, they also originate in the highest of spiritual states. The analogy given is that of a wall that is toppled. The stones from the top of the wall are the ones that fall the furthest. The holiest of Nitzosot are the ones that descend to the darkest of places. It is those sparks that we elevate today. Therefore, on the one hand, the world may appear darker than it ever did before. Yet, on the other hand, it is precisely now that we possess abilities our ancestors did not. If we think about the fact that we are empowered to rescue the very holiest of sparks, that it is we who can complete the task of millennia, we become energized and reach deep within ourselves. We're able to tap into the deepest and most potent part of our souls and overcome any challenges that stand in our way. This will complete the accomplishments of the many generations before us. It will usher in the age when God's holy sparks will no longer be hidden. They will shine in all their glory, and the world will be filled with their light. It does note that as far as the Hebrew text here, in visualizing the Hebrew words in this particular edition here, um, the author has followed the grammatical rules of the Holy Tongue, which occasionally differ from the traditional or colloquial pronunciation. The original footnotes to the Hebrew text appear at the end of the mimer here. I think what it's trying to say is, you got what it's trying to say, right? I wish we could sing a song before we start. The question is, what is the song to sing? Let us take just one brief moment here before we continue along. We're going into the mimer. We're going into the mimer. Just Bissel Far Bison. That means a small bite to eat, please God. And this got to be yucky by now. And the Malava Malka, one of the big parts about it is eating. I already had a small meal, but I didn't bring everything with me because we wouldn't have the time to eat, and we still may not have the time to eat. Just one more moment if I can find something. Find yourself something to eat if you need to also. Just a moment. We'll have our lives transformed. Just one more moment, please. To let the Lord speak, sometime we need to listen. Rabbi Zakaflosky, Rabbi Beryl Zakaflosky, the Shliach here, one of the Shluchim here in Arizona. Mazel tov and congratulations for Rabbi Levertov on 49 years of Shlichus here in Arizona. Thank you for the beautiful leadership. And as I was talking about Rabbi Zakaflosky, he's one of the original Shluchim here in Arizona. I'm not sure the whole numbers of all the people, but he's been here for a very great long time. I'm not sure the appropriate ways to memorialize, but we would like to mention, if I'm correct, it's his mother. If I'm correct, her name's Shandil. And we're grateful for her birthing Beryl, and we're grateful for you in Arizona, Beryl. And our hats off to you and your family and your father as well. And may we all be continued to be blessed very greatly. Thank you, Rabbi Levertov and Mrs. Levertov, for 49 years of service here in Arizona. And thank you, Rabbi Zakaflosky, for your selfless service here in Arizona as well. And for your mother, Shandel. L'chaim, l'chaim. With the help of heaven, 12th of Tammuz, 5711. You have given those who fear you a banner to be raised up for your everlasting truth. The book of Psalms, 60th chapter, 6th verse. In a Hasidic discourse on this verse, which he sent to the Soviet Union and was recently published, my father-in-law, the Rebbe, cites the Targum. This is Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Sneerson, 1880 through 1950, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe. In 1933, while living in Poland, he wrote a mimer, this Hasidic discourse, that explained the aforementioned verse from Psalm 60th chapter, 6th verse. He sent the mimer to the Jews who were living under communist oppression in the Soviet Union. It related to their predicament and discussed the self-sacrifice they would need to overcome their challenges. In 1951, this mimer was published in New York by his son-in-law and successor, the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem M. Sneerson, who added source notes and comments. Cites the Targum. You have given those who fear you a test to be tested with. Because of the truth of Abraham, which is everlasting, my father-in-law explains that the test that God has given refers to the self-sacrifice needed to overcome Nisyanot. In the above text, the Hebrew word for banner, nes, is related to the word nisyan, in plural nisyanot, a test or challenge referring to the trials and tribulations endured during exile. Some commentaries, Ray.Metsu.Zion, explain the verse as referring to the raising of a banner, alluding to the elevated status given to those who fear you. Targum and Rashi, however, explains it as referring to Nisyanot, with the verse describing that Nisyanot that are given to those who fear God. In this discourse, it is the Targum's translation that is analyzed from the perspective of Hasidic philosophy, which has been given to uplift the Jewish nation. And the mimer on our verse, Sefer HaMamarim, 5680, pages 105, 113, 5689, page 203. Strength through challenge. The current exile is different than the previous ones. The Jewish nation has endured 4 exiles. According to their resolve, they are Egyptian bondage, Babylonian captivity, domination by the Syrian Greek Empire, and the current exile, which began with the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans. The latter is also known as the exile of Edom and is the final exile, as it will be followed by the complete redemption through Mashiach. The current exile is different from the previous ones because there is an extremely severe concealment of the divine, which results in the many trials and tribulations we face. This itself shows us the strength we are given from above to overcome these nisyanot. The Holy One, blessed be He, does not make unreasonable demands of his creations, according to Avodah Zarah 3a. Therefore, the very existence of the vast darkness means we are given the tools to vanquish it. Page 24, this inner strength in the final exile is greater than what the Jewish nation had during the exile in Egypt, which is the root of all subsequent evils. Bereshis Rabbah 16:4, Arizal's Lakutei Torah. Sefer HaMetzriim 5684, page 279, 5709, and page 107. There, the Torah tells us that they did not listen to Moses because of their anguished spirit and the harsh slavery. According to the book of Exodus, 6th chapter, 9th verse. In other words, the Nisyanot had sufficient power to disturb them from their service of God. The Nisyanot they faced did not lead to growth. On the contrary, they had a negative effect as opposed to the current exile when they can be overcome. However, in our current exile, we are empowered to recognize the truth behind the challenges, which is that they are simply tests. In other words, Nisyanot have no significance on their own. They exist solely to test us and thereby elevate us. Tests versus other physical things. My father-in-law, the Rebbe, then continues by explaining that the real Nisyan is the fact that the godly spark within the difficulty is entirely concealed, according also to Sefer Hamarim 56a 80, 5680, page 107, 5689, page 206, 5700, page 22. 57.8, page 94, Sefer HaMamarim, Melokot, volume 1, page 187F, new edition, volume 4, page 50. See also Lakutei Torah, Ra'eh, 19b, Derek Mitzvostecha, 185b. All of the people who have those books in your home right now, it's important that we go back and review and look at the words of the Rebbe and take them to heart. Objects of Nisyan differ from other physical things. The objective when working with the latter is to engage them and elevate their hidden divine spark to become subsumed in godliness. Everything in creation has a spark of godliness that serves as its soul, according to Tanya Sha'ir Hayichud Veha Imuna, chapter 1. Feel free to just look inside this particular text and mime yourself and see the illumination that it gives to you. And don't just listen to me. If you speak Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language, look inside and see the depth and the richness of the language. If you're new to it, enjoy and learn and receive the godly light at the level you're on and review and then come back and grow. Back inside. However, the way to elevate objects of Nisyan is not to engage them, rather to work on oneself, because the Nisyan is a non-entity on its own and exists only to conceal and prevent. Therefore, the objective here is to work on oneself, to stimulate the inner strength until all obstacles disappear. This is a short summary of the words of my father-in-law, the Rebbe, in the first part of that mimer. We have the power. The point made there is that it is specifically during this last exile, with the overwhelming darkness that precedes Mashiach, whose arrival will end all concealment, that we have the power not to succumb to the challenges. We can awaken our inner vigor, which is powerful, while simultaneously be in a state of utter submission to God. According to Sefer Hamamrim 5680, page 108, accessing the core of strength and submission is what raises us up. The raised banner, described in the verses translated by the Targum, is an uplifting of the Jewish people as explained above. When this level is reached, the Nision, the challenge, vanishes as if it never existed. Number 2, 3 components. Now, serving God entails 2 kinds of work: avodot habararim and avodot hanisyanot. Avodot habararim releases the godly spark within physical things. Avodot hanisyanot is the triumph over challenges, each of which consists of 3 components: the thing upon which the work is performed, the person doing the work, and the manner in which the work is carried out, with the object being refined or overcome. Jot this down. Serving God entails 2 kinds of work: releasing the godly spark within physical things and triumphing over challenges. Each of these things consists of 3 components. Draw it out, please. I wish I had a pen. Get your piece of paper right now, okay? All right. Serving God entails 2 kinds of work. Release the godly spark on one side. Release the godly spark within physical things. Okay? On the other side, triumph over challenges. Each of which consists of 3 components. A, the thing upon which the work is performed. Take an action right now. Write it down. You don't ever have to come back to this piece of paper again, but when you write it down, it goes into your psyche. The person doing the work and number 3, the manner in which the work is carried out, with the object being refined or overcome. Each of these 3 components, there is a difference between the work of Berorim and the triumph over Nisyanot, the challenges. The Berorim is the releasing the godly spark within the physical thing. The reason why the primary mission to overcome Nisyanot, challenges, is during the final part of this current final exile. The time immediately preceding the arrival of Mashiach. is because it is the time to work with the final sparks, the tiniest, most hidden ones, as we learn in Abraham Marine 5680, page 107. Number one, the object, the thing upon which the work is performed. The work of Berorim refines and elevates the spark within the physical object by working with the object. Nisyanot, however, have no real existence in and of themselves. We learn this in Basha'a Shehigdimu 5672, volume 2, page 681. Also, Sefer HaMamarim 5689, 5700, 578, and Sefer HaMamarim Melukat. For all of you have all those books in your home, refer to the source and open it up and finish the work of Avodat Habarim and the Avodah Nisyanot, please. Only you can do this work. You have it. It's all right before us, please. Please. You will. Don't. There's no begging needed. And as mentioned above, they exist only in order to conceal and challenge. So there is nothing per se with which to do the work, meaning the Nision is imaginary. Still, even something with so feeble an existence must have a divine spark. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist at all, not even as an imagined obstacle. That a Nision contains a divine spark within is understood from what my father-in-law presents in his mimer regarding Nision, that in the Egyptians' exile, they did not listen because of their anguished spirit and the harsh slavery. Harsh slavery clearly took place in Egypt, and within it were hidden many sparks of holiness that were refined and elevated during the exodus from Egypt, as we learn in Kamfe Yonah 358, cited by Megillah Amukot of Fame 58. So Sefer HaMamarim 5689, page 205. As our sages say in Barakot 9b regarding the verse, they stripped Egypt in the book of Exodus, 12th chapter, 36th verse. They made Egypt like a trap without grain, bait, like the depths of the sea without fish, meaning that they removed all the holy sparks that had been there. The verse refers to the treasures the Jewish people were able to take from their Egyptian oppressors. The inner meaning of those treasures is the holy sparks that were trapped and concealed in Egypt, which were revealed and released during the exile. And we learn in Torah or Bo 60c. In other words, it cannot be said that there were no sparks in the harsh slavery, i.e., in the Nision, because the harsh slavery was a real experience. Thus, the Nision actually existed because it contained the divine sparks. Page 30. However, that a Nision must contain a spark and as a result must exist too, does not contradict the earlier point that the work of Berorim refines and elevates the spark within the physical object, but Nisyanot have no real existence in and of themselves, for the spark of holiness is a Nisyan is different. This for the spark of holiness and a Nisyan is different. It's so hidden that it does not emit any light at all. It cannot even be called light. Indeed, it is sometimes described in Sefer HaMarim 5665, page 104, 5680, page 108, 5670, page 104, Beisha'a Shehigdimu 5672, volume 2, page 770. Please open your source, go in there and transform all now as a spark that has itself become dark, similar to when, please, the piece itself becomes unkosher. According to Chulin 100a, 108a, if a kosher drop of milk falls upon a piece of kosher meat in a pot, the piece of meat becomes forbidden, which in turn renders the entire contents of the pot forbidden. The piece is now considered as if it were forbidden to begin with. That it was originally kosher, but now contains an unkosher element. The halakhification of this law is, in order for the meat in the pot to become permitted, the pot must contain 60 times the amount of the forbidden piece, which would nullify the forbidden element. Having 60 times the drop of milk would not suffice to nullify the problem. Rather, the entire piece has been rendered forbidden and thus necessitates there being 60 times the entire piece of meat. The mimer uses a detail of this law to explain the mystical topic at hand. The divine spark within a Nision is inherently holy, but it becomes concealed and darkened to the point where it is indiscernible, similar to the milk drop falling into the meat. Since the spark has become indiscernible, it causes the person to not persevere toward overcoming the challenge. Therefore, Nisyanot have no real existence in and of themselves. Herein lies a distinction between Berarim and Nisyanot, the releasing the Gali spark within a physical thing and triumphing over our challenges. With regard to the object being worked on, the former contains a spark of light, a spark that behaves like light, it illuminates, etc. Whereas the latter's spark emits no light. Although its essence is holy, it appears dark and akin to the piece that became unkosher. Number two, the person doing the work. Okay, we got the releasing the golly spark within the physical thing and triumph over challenges and the three facts that are under it, the thing upon which the work is performed. Number two, the person doing the work. This difference in the kind of work leads to a difference in the person doing the work, as well as a difference in the manner of work. To overcome a nisyan, the person must reach deep within his soul to access his very essence, similar to the spark within a Nisyan, which has lost its light and retains only its essence. Number three, the method or the manner. The method too is different. Rather than engaging and negotiating or in order to elevate the object working with Nisyanot, entails the inner strength and inner submission to God that comes from the essence of the soul. In other words, the work of Berarim, releasing the godly spark within the physical thing, which is the process of distinguishing between good and evil and extracting the positive elements. This is often a struggle, negotiating with the object being refined to ensure that the positive elements are extracted and utilized for holy purposes. For example, when a person eats, he can either focus on the physical pleasure and satisfaction gained from the food, or he can recognize that the food is to be consumed for the purpose of having energy to serve God. This inner struggle and debate is a spiritual battle with the godly soul attempting to redeem the divine spark within the food by extracting it from the physical enclosure and elevating it to its spiritual source. We'll see at length and all for the sake in Quixote 2012. Play Nader next week. This strength comes from the person's essence, as does the attitude of complete and total submission to God's will. This concept of bittul that we opened up an hour ago, and that state the person does not negotiate with the obstacle. Rather, he ignores the challenge continues during the work. God, oh my God, please help us to apply this will. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Number 3, Gimel. To explain the difference in the type of work in more detail, avodas, habararim begins with prayer, which is referred to as the time of battle. We learn this in Zohar 3, 243a, 1, 240b, Tikune Zohar 1329b, Lakute Torah 8, 34c, and 35c. Although Avodot Habarim is done while engaging with the world through eating, drinking, and other worldly involvements, we need to ensure that these worldly involvements do not bring the person down. Rather, the person must be able to elevate them by releasing their holy sparks. Therefore, before beginning this work, the person must generally weaken the corporeality of the body and animal soul, as well as the corporeality of the external environment. Since the process of Bararim requires engaging with the physical matter, there is the possibility of being overwhelmed by its corporal properties, in which case the person will be negatively influenced and pulled down by the crass physicality instead of extracting the divine spark and discarding the material aspects. To ensure this does not occur, a general weakening of materialistic matter is required via prayer as a preparatory stage to this process of bererim, releasing the godly spark within a physical thing. Page 34. This is accomplished through prayer, the battle to weaken the physical body and animal soul in general, through the meditation that precedes the prayers, as well as the meditation during the prayers on the spiritual beings called Ophanim and Chayat HaKodesh. These 2 types of angels mentioned in scripture, as we see in Isaiah in the 6th chapter, 2nd verse, and in Ezekiel in the 3rd chapter, 13th verse, as well as in the blessings before the Shema and the morning and Ophanim, reside in Asiyah, the lowest of the 4 celestial worlds, while Chayot HaKadesh residing at Yetzirah, which is the world above Asiyah, Berea, Atzilus, For a general discussion on these angels, we see in Sefer HaMarim 5665, page 224. The sources cited there, Lakute Ter Vayikra 2b, transforming the inner self, which we just learned that says when he sits up, he goes from the one world to the next. And the way they worship God, these being the spiritual source of the animal soul, this Lakute Teira cited in 27 and 29. The person can weaken the body and animal soul in general, and thereby his external environment as well. This is why it is forbidden to eat or tend to worldly affairs before praying, according to Brachos 10b, 14a, Lakute Teira. Pinchas 79d, Mamarim, Admor Hazak, and Al Parshiot Hatayra, Vayikra Devarim, page 747, or Hatorah Breshis, volume 6, page 1020a, Sefer Hamamarim 5689, page 84. Before we cause an overall weakening of the self and environment, there is concern that instead of prevailing over the physical, the reverse might happen. We might be dragged down by it. Only after prayer, which is the first battle, are we empowered to eat and do other worldly things that constitute the second stage of battle. That of bread is to be eaten, sword, which is the struggle to convert the physical to holiness. We learn in Bava Metzia 107b, 13 were said about eating morning bread. and leading to an accomplished day. The Talmud then cites a verse that implies that the morning prayers are to be followed by eating. You shall serve God, your Lord, and he will bless your bread and your water, according to Exodus in the 23rd chapter and 25th verse. In the Zohar 3, page 188b, we learn that just as prayer comes with a struggle, eating involves a battle as well. In order to eat for the sake of heaven, we must first fight off the animal soul so as not to be filled with desire for food. Rather, it must be eaten with the sole intent of serving God with the sustenance it provides. Page 36. As mentioned, the initial battle of Bererim, the releasing the godly spark within a physical thing during prayer, is through meditation. The reason for this is that the sparks we're dealing with retain their essence, their light, and their holiness. They can therefore be engaged in battle through reason and contemplation until they are elevated. It says here that physical objects generally contain a mix of positive elements represented by the divine spark as well as negative elements associated with its physical properties where the divine spark is not entirely concealed. The object's positive elements are evident as well. Therefore, the process of Bererim is a struggle to focus on the divine spark and separate the good from evil. The rational faculties can be implied in this battle to recognize the positive aspects inherent in the object and utilize them for sacred purposes. When it comes to Nisyanot, however, since the sparks are so deeply buried as to have become unkosher and as dark as the three holy and pure klipot, there is no one to negotiate with. Meditation cannot win that battle. It says Kabbalah uses the symbol of klipot shells to connote evil and the source of sensual desire within human nature. They're referred to as shells because they hide the sparks of holiness within them. There are two types of klipot. One, the three impure klipot, which are completely evil and contain no traces of good. The divine sparks are so utterly hidden and concealed within them that they cannot ever find expression within holiness, nor can holiness ever be expressed through these kalipa. We learn this in Tanya chapter 6. Kalipa nola, which is literally translucent shell. Noga denotes brightness, indicating that it contains a bright side. Okay. Some good that can be revealed that is freed from their imprisonment. In contrast to Bererim, releasing the godly spark within the physical thing, the divine spark within a Nisyan is entirely concealed, and the positive elements are not at all apparent. It is impossible to utilize the rational faculties to extract the divine spark because there is no positive element to focus on to leverage the divine spark free of its entrapment. Rather, the winning strategy is to stand strong and unwavering with energy and submission to God that comes from the essence to see no other way but to withstand the Nisan. As a result of this strong stance, the energy and submission that comes from the essence of the soul, not based on the external expressions of the soul, reasoning and contemplation, even those sparks that are hidden within the Nisyan can then be freed, for their essence remains. Therefore, the spark can be extracted from the Nisyan, meaning by standing strong and unwavering, the person can focus on the right thing and thus succeed in overcoming the Nisyan, knowing it does not have a central reality, it is not really there. Number 4, Dalet. For avodat hanisianot, triumphing over challenges, we must access the level of yachida, which is the very deepest state of the godly soul. According to Sefer HaMamrim 5680, page 109, also Sefer HaMamrim Melokad, volume 1, page 185, new edition, volume 4, page 48F. Your Yechida wants to go there right now if your book is in your house. Regarding the names of the soul, see Breshis Rabbah 14:9, Devarim Rabbah 237. 5 names are given to the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. Some editions of the Midrash have variations to this order, but in the writings of the Arizal and in Hasidic literature, this order is stated specifically. See also Zohar 181a and 206a. If you have the books in your house, please go. God, please let the video go to those who need to hear. Let it be audio, whatever that they need. Make the books jump off their shelf and open and go to them now so that we can complete your work, please. These 5 names are the 5 levels of the soul. Nefesh, vitality, is the lowest grade and life force of the body. The natural soul and simple life of man. Ruach, spirit. The next grade is the spiritual faculty vivifying man's emotional attributes. Neshama, soul, is a divine force vivifying the intellect. Chaya, life, is even more refined, godly level, vivifying the human power of will or desire. Yachida, singularity, is the divine spark itself, clothed in the most refined spark of the soul. Yachida, the highest of the 5 levels, is the innermost point of the soul, the essence, united and one with God. It represents total bittul, self nullification, nothingness. Is expressed in Mesiris Nefesh, literal self-sacrifice. The essential strength required to overcome Nisyanot stems from Yechida. For more on Yechida, we have the book on the essence of Chassidus, chapter 5, which we'll get to that one. We're lining them up. We got a lot of work to do. Only on this level, this Yechida now to thank you Toodles and the Step Up program and get ready for a new Aaron Shel Pesach program this year from Toodles. We're not going to have to repeat the same one. I was happy to do piece by piece, and I'm more than happy to do Step Up again too, because that was an amazing program. But Toodles reminded us that they will be releasing a new program for Aharon Shel Pesach for the Mashiach Suda. Please tune in if you're not following that or have of it, please begin to follow. The Yechida, the Yud, okay? The Yud is in every one of the 22 Hebrew consonants. And each of the Hebrew consonants represents us. And we have to know that Mashiach is a Yechida soul, and there is a piece of Mashiach in each one of us. In every last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, in the 22 consonants. You can find the letter Yod, the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, inside of it. That is because every Jew has the Yechida, a piece of Mashiach. Mashiach is the Yechida soul. Each one of us are a different soul. Nefesh, Ruach, or Neshama. But Mashiach is a Yechida soul, and each of us have a piece of Mashiach inside of us. Only on this level can the deepest level of the animal soul, its Yechida, be transformed, i.e., the super rational commitment to impurity. is sometimes explained in Shari Teshuva, Shari Hatafila 54C, cited in Sefer HaMamrim 5680, page 110, 5700, page 41. That when the Yechida is revealed, the challenge of Nisyan doesn't even exist. The Nisyan is solely the challenge to reach the revelation of the Yechida. Once the Yechida is revealed, all obstacles disappear and the person can serve God unencumbered. The mimer first explained how the awakening, the essence of the soul, the Yechida, is essential to withstanding Nisyan. Note, the ability to overcome the Nisyan necessitates the awakening of the essential dimension of the soul. Now, the mimer will explain that the entire objective of the Nisyan is to awaken the Yechida, at which point the Nisyan disappears. This is because opposition and challenge cannot exist in the presence of the Yechida. When this dimension of the soul is revealed, even those challenges that would ordinarily be seen as Nisyan are not viewed as such, as will be explained further. Thank you for staying with me. Chaim. First three levels of the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, are the lower internal ones which correspond to the intellect and emotions. You already know the mimer, so you can just finish it. Or you go preach it and teach it to someone else. Or you go back and open those sources that I was just talking about and you put the pieces together. Please. The three lower levels of the soul correspond to three respective parts of the human body. The Neshama is situated in the brain, the seat of intellect, or more specifically, Binah, comprehension. Ruach is situated in the heart, the primary seat of emotions. Nefesh is in the liver, referring to practical fulfillment of mitzvahs. We see in Sefer HaMamrim 5680, page 279, Torah Menachim. Sefer HaMamrim 5730, page 220. The final two, Chaya and Yechida, are higher and are makifim, transcendent powers. Chaya is the will, and Yechida is the capacity for pleasure. The two higher parts of the soul are not bound to any specific limb, Just as the power of will and pleasure affect the entire human body, when working on elevating something by engaging or negotiating with it, the person is utilizing the mind and heart, which correspond to the first three levels of the soul. When it comes to the higher powers, those of will and pleasure, there isn't room for debate. Something either brings pleasure or it doesn't. Therefore, when serving God with the yechida of the godly soul, it becomes obvious that what brings pleasure is godliness. There is no need for a battle because the decision is clear. This affects the animal soul's pleasures as well. Its capacity for pleasure comes from its own yechida. The godly soul's yechida can triumph to the point that physical things stop causing pleasure for the person. They become inconsequential. At that point, they are no longer any challenges or nisyanot. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of La'adi, thank you, Baal Hatanya, for the 25th of Teves and the two lights that are brought down, explains in Igeret HaKadosh. Section 11 and the end of 116b, that a person of faith should not fear suffering of any kind because he looks at all worldly matters with total equanimity. Material well-being can only be a source of worry and distress if material things are of some significance. However, if they are utterly inconsequential, there is no cause for worry. What truly matters is only the Torah and mitzvahs. And from the Torah's perspective, all that God does is for good. According to Barachot 60b, seeing things that way removes any challenges that a person may face. That is what it means to operate using Yechida. Yechida provides this perspective, and from this perspective, challenges do not exist. Page 42, number 5. Hey is the letter, not a hey. Hey, listen up. We explained earlier that the sparks in the Nisyan are utterly hidden, and all that remains is their essence, which was the root of the differences between the work of Bedorim and that of Nisyanot. Now, according to the sources that we spoke about earlier of Sefer HaMamorim 5680, page 107, 5689, page 206, 5700, page 22, 5708, page 94, Sefer HaMamorim Melokat, volume 1, page 187F, new edition, volume 4, page 50, and also Lakute Torah A19b and Derek Misfosecha 185b, that the very highest sparks are the ones that fall the lowest, having fallen so low to the point where all that remains is its essence. The sparks within the Siyanot have a higher spiritual source than all others. Why do we find self-sacrifice more prevalent in the later generations than in earlier times? For the answer to that, it says we look inside it, Sefer HaMamorim 5648. Jot that down, page 186, 5685, page 257 through 264, 5689, page 207, 5709, page 118, Sefer HaMamorim Yiddish, page 311, Sefer HaMamorim Melokat, volume 1, page 194, volume 2, page 51 in the new edition, volume 4, page 57, volume 3, page 194. Remember when we're talking about godly light coming from above and emotive light coming from below, and this frenetic energy that's applying our emotions and making intellect and having this exchange of God worlds, bringing the Shekinah. When you go inside of those books and that frenetic energy that's going right there, and you match it with the action we are creating and making a place for God in this world, the Dira Bita Aktonim, and bringing Mashiach. The reason is that earlier generations were on a higher intellectual level than the later ones. When the intellect is revealed, there is less room for self sacrifice because the intellect can obscure the capacity for it, just as it is easier for the hill to experience self sacrifice than it is for the head. The latter generations compared to a hill, as in the expression, the hills of Mashiach, this ikvesa di Mashiach, have a stronger capacity for self sacrifice than those earlier generations. Likewise, with regard to the spark and Anision, they are the lowest and most hidden of the sparks, precisely because they fell from the highest and holiest source. Dor Hashvei. Here we are, the seventh generation with the capacity to finish the work. Vav. I think this is the meaning of the verse. For the Lord your God is testing you to know. In the book of Deuteronomy 13, chapter 4th verse, in its simple meaning, the verse says that God tests the people to know if they love him. Here the mimer focuses on the part of the verse and interprets it to mean that the purpose of test is to know God. We know that inside the Gemara, when we look inside, there's various elements or ailments that face a person sometimes, and it gives various reasonings. If I'm correct, it's tractate barakos of things that affect the person and why it might affect the person, and it's talking about sometimes a person goes through XYZ because of A or B or C. And these are the way that we're supposed to look at ourselves, to try to find out the source of what ails us inside this world and outside of this world. But when we look at others, we're not supposed to think this way. But sometimes it says here in this tractate that sometimes the challenge that the person is going through is for no and from no purpose of their own, that God is only putting this person through this trial because he loves that person and desires to draw him near. Deuteronomy 13:4, in its simple meaning, the verse said that God tests the people to know if they love him. Here the mimer focuses on that part of the verse and interprets it to mean that the purpose of test is to know God. Knowing God is the purpose of Mashiach's coming, and the way to that knowledge is through Nisyanot tests. I understand why some people don't want to hear about the Messianic era and why we might not be ready for Mashiach. Stop now with that. I was fearful in the beginning too. I'm still not sure I know what we're talking about now, but Rabbi Levertov has always taught me, just bring it. Bring it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. The reason why this knowledge is through Nisyanot is that the hidden nature of the spark within the Nisyan makes it impossible to work with them through ordinary battle. The only path is through revealing the Yachida by exhibiting an inner core of strength and submission. The godly Yachida then transforms the animalistic Yachida, and the person can then see all physical concerns with total equanimity, which destroys the Nision, as described above in section Gimel. The sparks within it are restored to the realm of holiness, to the highest of levels therein, since it is the highest sparks that fell to the lowest point. Says here that the conventional understanding is that the divine spark within a Nisayan is concealed to the point that is beyond redemption. Attempting to refine and elevate that spark is an exercise in futility, since it has been entirely absorbed and enveloped in the forces of negativity. Consequently, the approach must be to focus inward, awakening the essence of the soul instead of attempting to extract the spark within. The Rebbe now introduces a novel idea that even this spark within the Nisyan can be elevated. Instead, its very existence as a deepened spark is indicative of its lofty source, since that which is highest falls lowest. What differentiates releasing the godly spark within a physical thing from triumph over challenges is not whether the sparks can be refined and elevated, rather, the method by which they are elevated. Releasing the godly spark within a physical thing, the Bererim require engaging the divine spark, since it is not entirely concealed, and triumphing over your challenges. The Nisyanot require the awakening of the Yachida, but in both instances, the sparks are refined and elevated. Aleph, base, fish, Gimel, Dalet, hey. To Zion? I don't know what it is. Number 7. The 7th. There's something about the 7th. This is why the refining. And the only reason why we know the 7th is the 7th is because that's what we're taught. Dor Hashve'i, we're the 7th. I sat there today talking to people at headquarters, and I thought to myself that if you would have been, if you stood where I stood, you'd do better than me. And that's the truth. If I had stood where you stood, I'd tell you I'd do worse than you. Know that today. I'm proud of you. I couldn't. I couldn't. I don't know how God's people stand with utmost capacity, how we sit and look in the streets in our communities and Jews Friday night clean, running up the street, doing mitzvahs and avoda and complete focus and kavanah and the dedication and then the kids, the Sfias Hashem and the Rabbanim and the selfless sacrifice and choices that they make, and 7 times 7 years of shlichus. And the Jewish people for thousands of years refining godly creation to when we can become Dor Hashve'i right now. This is why the refining of the last hidden sparks through overcoming the last tests and challenges of this dark exile, after which there will be no more tests, since the spirit of impurity will pass from the earth. According to Zechariah 13th chapter 2nd verse, is followed by the fulfillment of the prophecy. The world shall be filled with the knowledge of God, according to Isaiah 11:9. The Tyrus promise, for the Lord your God is testing you to know, will become revealed, that the purpose of these tests is knowledge of God. Know the God of your fathers. First Chronicles 28th verse 9th, 28th chapter 9th verse. Therefore, now is the time when we are given these challenges, not as it was in Mitzrayim and Egypt when the people were bewildered by the tests. Rather, it is as my father-in-law, the Rebbe, explains in the mimer, in this exile, we are given the capability and strength to realize that the tests are just that, simply tests. And we are able to triumph over them by reaching our deepest strength and submission to God. Then we can liberate those last sparks and come to the true knowledge of God, which was the goal of those very challenges. For the whole reason the Lord your God is testing you, in order to know, to reach the state where the world becomes filled with the knowledge of God. Therefore, when we stand up to any obstacle in our path, by not engaging with it and negotiating, but with inner strength that says, true, I may be insignificant, but when I serve God, I will not back down from anything. I know this is the only way. This is what must be done. The challenge fades to nothing. The spark hidden in the Nision is then refined and elevated, and we hasten the revelation of godliness that will come with our righteous Mashiach. The preparation for his coming is that every one of us works with the aforementioned strength and submission to God that comes from our very essence. And we do this in these last moments of exile. Then he will speedily merit the revelation of God himself in all his glory with the coming of Mashiach very soon. Amen. Fill your cup, open your heart, and fill your vessel for complete godliness, for the acceptance of a new season, that the changes that are coming before us are the final challenges. And they don't even exist. It's only to bring about this final future redemption that we are here right now. L'chaim, l'chaim, for life, to a beautiful, wonderful week, to God's people bringing forth God's will. L'chaim.